Hello, I'm Randy Barber, and welcome to Let's Talk Education. This is always a chance for you to hear directly from the Boulder Valley School District's team on important topics in our school. Earlier this week, BVSD Superintendent Rob Anderson sent out an update regarding our reintroduction plans, letting families know that we'll be going back to school a week later than planned in Phase 3. As you might recall, our hybrid model, in which our students will have the opportunity to be in 2 days a week if they're interested, feel comfortable, and are medically able to participate in in-person learning. The remainder of the time, they'll participate in home learning. The delayed start will allow us to provide additional time for training and planning for our employees, especially educators. This afternoon, we'll be speaking to an entire panel of folks from our district regarding the plan. But first, before we begin, we'd love to talk to Superintendent Anderson. Good afternoon, Rob.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing today?
Well, I'll tell you, this has been probably my best week of the summer. I've had the opportunity to attend multiple graduation ceremonies every day this week. This tan isn't from being on vacation, I promise you. It's from standing with the class of 2020, watching them come together in incredible ceremonies that have honored social distancing and the proper health precautions, but have really let us celebrate our seniors. And I will tell you, it has just been really great. I've had so much fun. And I've got a few more to go. I'm excited to go to Monarch High School tomorrow, Boulder Prep tomorrow evening, and then Netherland High School on Saturday. It's just one of the most special times of year for me. So it's been wonderful, busy, and really great.
I thought last night's graduation was really apropos for this year. We're out there in the middle of a stadium that's been set up for COVID-19 with social distancing and people wearing masks, and a thunderstorm comes in and sweeps in and treats the audience as soon as they're finished giving the last graduate their diploma with a torrential downpour. It seems appropriate this year, doesn't it, Rob?
Well, we were so focused on wearing our masks, we forgot our umbrellas. So we got a little bit wet. Still a great ceremony. It was still awesome. And thanks to the Peak to Peak administration and their board for just holding such a great event.
I know that you and I have talked about as we've been out there. First of all, just the gratitude that we've seen from the parents. This has been a tough year. Our seniors, throughout that end of the semester, they've lost out on a lot of the things that they typically would expect. But a lot of what we heard was, we went through the parade. We really enjoyed that. We appreciated all the things that happened in May. But to be able to walk and do these things was so important. And, just the conversation, too, that this working through all the health requirements was sort of an important step in preparing for the school year.
I think it's just a sign of things to come for our school district and just society in general. I can't tell you how many times we had to revisit our plan, adjust our plan, or how many times it could have been easy for us to just throw our hands up and say, we can't do it, it's too complicated. But we persevered, our team did an incredible job, and it just ended in this just amazing ceremony. And it wasn't amazing because it was perfect. It wasn't perfect. I would tell you that every ceremony I went to, there were things that mistakes were made and certainly challenges. But it was because we persevered and came together for our kids. And that's what made it so special. Nobody's taking these moments for granted. And as we go into a school year that's going to have tons and tons of challenges, I think, for school districts, it is how do we persevere? How do we buckle down? Don't give up on trying to make this work. It would be very easy for us to say, we can't do it. We can't do anything. We're going to go all to home learning. We haven't done that. We feel like we owe our kids, we owe our community, we owe everyone the opportunity to try to make this work. So I think it was just a good reminder of how life is going to be until this vaccine or herd immunity allows us to get out from under the wrath of COVID-19.
I know that we, as we talk about as a leadership team, the health and safety of our students is a huge concern for us. And again, that's why we're working so hard with this. We've been partnering with and they've been on the show before, Boulder County Public Health, with Broomfield Public Health, to really kind of work through these things and walk down this path together. I mean, the guidelines continue to change every other day. It seems like there's something new that we're hearing from the CDC, or it can cause some confusion for folks that are out there. What would you want to say in regards to the way that we're approaching this?
Well, first of all, I cannot thank Boulder County Public Health, Broomfield Public Health enough. The time that they've invested with us to do everything we can to bring kids back has just been incredible. We really, really appreciate their partnership. And, I would say, Randy, in thinking through this, and I shared this on Tuesday at our board meeting, that's one threshold we're trying to meet, is to make sure that we've mitigated the risks to a point where we can bring back kids. I will tell you there's another threshold that we're still working on, and I would say that we have work to do, and that's to make sure that people feel safe, especially our teachers. Our teachers, I've said this during my interviews, every chance that I get, our teachers are our most important asset as a school district. Our public needs to know that they want to come back to work, and they're appreciative of our plan. We're going to get more feedback on that, but we're still going to have work to do. We owe it to our employees to make sure that they feel safe. I'm listening with them. One of the challenges, I think as we've worked through this, is we've been handling so much complicated information coming at us so quickly with not much time to react. It hasn't provided the space to engage our teachers in the way I think they deserve. I own that. I apologize to our teachers for not being more intentional and bringing them along with us. We've certainly been working with teachers, but not in a comprehensive way that I think that we need to moving forward. So we're going to be working to do that. I was meeting with a group of teachers that represent our BVEA, our Boulder Valley Educators Association, this afternoon, right before this call. They gave me great feedback, and they spoke from the heart, and they were really honest with me on where they're at. And I heard that, and I think that we need to continue to work together to find ways that we can make people feel safe as we come back. And I'm just very sensitive to how our teachers are feeling right now because this is scary, and that with so much information and so much information coming from so many different sources, sometimes it's hard to sort out where things actually are. People are scared, and I want our community to know that and understand that that's something where we are listening to. And personally, I'm really trying to figure out how we can work through that.
I would be remiss not to mention, you were talking about the board meeting. Some folks have asked multiple times on social media in regards to our board meeting being held virtually. This call is being held virtually, and so people will say, how is it possible to be safely back in school if even our leaders aren't meeting in person? And it's important to mention that our education center is actually under massive construction right now. When you've driven over there lately, what does it look like right now, Rob?
I think it's coming along well. And listen, Randy, if I had enough room in my guest bedroom where I've been working, we could all hang here, right? I don't know that public comment might be tough. They might have to talk out the east window. Yes, no, I know that. But this is an emotional time, and I think that folks, who see that we're meeting virtually, they rightfully are going to hold us accountable and wonder, well, why aren't you meeting face to face? I'll tell you that as soon as our administrative building is up and running, we look forward to meeting face to face. It has been great to be face to face with all of our thousands of graduates that we've been able to work with this year. We are not working virtually because we're afraid to be together. We just logistically, our building's not ready. We would be meeting literally in a building without roof, electricity. That just doesn't make any sense.
I know that we are looking at having board meetings again in August, and we'll be coming back together. And it just has been wonderful being at graduation, in which you can finally see and work with your colleagues again. So I will say that as well. You had mentioned about, again, the difficulty and the complexity of all this and the way that people are struggling through it. I know our families this week, we've asked them to go in IC and let us know if they're planning on opting out of in-person if they don't feel comfortable with that right now, so that we can make some plans for it. What would you want, my last question is, what do you want our families to know as they're struggling? They, of course, understandably want more information. Today, that's part of why we're here, is to kind of provide that with our expert panel. But, what would you want them to know? We understand where they're coming from.
I get it. This is a tough spot. We don't have a lot of time if we're going to pull off in-person learning, and we need to hear from our community where they want to be. There's and I know that folks want more information. I will tell you this: if we wait till we can answer every single question, we'll be wringing our hands so much we'll never make a decision. right? And I know that that's hard to hear because folks want to have every single piece of information when it comes to making decisions for their kids. I totally get that. We're doing everything we can to begin to answer as many questions as we can. We sent out a fairly detailed email to parents yesterday, trying to answer as many questions as we can. I think hopefully today we can get into some of the differences between if I'm doing home learning at my school versus home learning at Boulder Universal. I think that's a big one that I've certainly been hearing. And I would just ask folks to do the very best they can to give us the information that they, where it is that their choice is. That's going to let us set the wheels in motion to figure out if we're able to pull off phase 3. I would say that in the board meeting, what I shared is you're going to need a couple things. You need health officials to approve a plan that's workable, that keeps, that mitigates the risk to the point where folks are comfortable going back. And then we've got to make sure that we're able to make our employees fit the system that we're trying to enter into. And so, with employee exemptions, and I want the public to know and all of our teachers to know, if you're at high risk, you should file an exemption. If you're scared and you're at high risk and you or somebody that you live with and you love, file the exemption. That's what it's there for. Our plan certainly takes lots of aspects into consideration, but my expectation is that those folks are exempted and that we try to figure out how they can serve in our district online. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's why we need to know who wants to be online in school and who wants to be online in Boulder Universal, so we can start making those switches, matching up our talented employees with the needs of our community. But if we waited much longer, we wouldn't have the time to be able to pull this off. We would be forced into phase 1. And I think that any chance that we have to get any in-person learning for our kids is something that we need to take advantage of. And I'm committed to doing that.
And of course, I think that message that you just said also goes for our students. We know that we have medically fragile students. And so, this first situation while we're still in the pandemic may not be the right situation for them, which is why we're working so hard on what are those online scenarios so that they can have some way to continue their learning with their great teachers and the support that they get there. What have I missed? Is there anything else that you want to say before we move to our panel, Rob?
Well, I just want to thank our community, and I want to thank everybody who's emailed the Board of Education, myself, providing us your thoughts, impact, and just ideas. And some really incredible ideas that we've been able to share and pass on to our team that's really helped shape our practice. If you emailed me and I didn't get back to you, I apologize. I've been, trying to, stay up with that as best we can. We're really trying to drive all of our parents, teachers, community members who want to provide input for us to our Let's Talk webpage. Randy, I'm sure you're going to speak to that, which is more of a community conversation, so we can gather that in one place. We're all working 12, 14-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week to pull this off. Sometimes you just run out of time. And so if folks could do that for us, we'd really appreciate it. Just want to say just a huge thank you to the folks that are on this call today. We wouldn't even be thinking about pulling off some type of in-person learning if we didn't have the talent that you're going to be speaking to today. Randy, our team has been incredible, has stepped up, and have not only the capacity and the ability, but just have worked incredibly hard for our kids and for our community. And so just thank you to the team, and really, really happy we're having this conversation. I'm sure it won't be the last one we have either.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Superintendent, for your time. And as always, you're welcome to stay with us, or if you need to go off to other things, we understand as well. Speaking of that, you gave me a great segue to mention that we do have a new website that we are encouraging people to engage with us on. It's Let's Talk BVSD. So you just go to letstalk.bvsd.org. I know there's been a little bit of confusion that when you go to that site, you're not trying to enter in any of your other single sign-on or IC portal, or we've got a billion things we're working on that too. But you're going to want to register specifically for this website so that you can interact with other parents and teachers there. If you're an employee, you want to use your bvsd.org account so that you can have access to the additional content that's there for you. In addition, today we are going to be taking questions from folks out in the community. We've collected a lot already, as you can imagine. But if you go to Facebook, Twitter, or Let's Talk, there are some places where you can add your question now. And so without further ado, I do want to go ahead and introduce our panel of speakers today. This is Margaret Crespo, our area superintendent that oversees the Southwest area, which includes a lot of Boulder. And anyway, we can go into more of that later. We've got Chris Brecht, who's our coordinator that works with all the areas to make sure that all of our school. Chris, what's your exact title? I always mess this up. Not having it right in front of me.
It's the School and Network Leadership Coordinator. But
thank you. I will get that down. He's been with us for a few months now. I should do that. Rob Price is our Assistant Superintendent of Operational Services. And then finally, Stephanie Faren, who's our Director of Health Services. Thank you all for joining me, and thanks for helping me out with that title there, Chris. Well, why don't I start, with the health area here a little bit with Stephanie. Again, health and safety is a huge concern for us. We have been really working closely with Boulder County Public Health and looking at the guidelines that they've set out, everything else that's coming out right now, and talk a little bit about what all's gone into that work as I pull up my additional questions.
Just like you mentioned and Dr. Anderson mentioned, we have been working nonstop with both Boulder and Broomfield County public health agencies, probably on a daily calls or meetings with them since March. I think I know them better than my own family now. We've also been working very closely with CDPHE and helping to develop some of the guidance that's coming out around outbreaks and other school guidance that's been out for us. So it has been an ongoing process, and like you mentioned, it continues to evolve every day. This is a novel virus, and novel meaning that we've never seen it before, so we are learning constantly. And although it often feels like we've been doing this for a very, very long time, in the world of understanding viruses and disease processes, this is really quite a short time. So it's understandable that we're getting different guidance and information and requirements all the time.
I do know that recently Governor Polis came out with the mask mandate statewide, but we are implementing a number of safety protocols, masks being one of those. Do you want to talk about the mask and what else we're doing to keep kids and staff safe?
Certainly. So like you mentioned, we are going to be requiring students to wear a mask when they arrive at school and exit, when they're moving through the building, and most of the time when they're in classrooms also. We are hoping to be able to give them breaks during the day so that they can get outside and take their mask off and have some distance between them and exercise. We'll be requiring students to stay distanced as much as possible, knowing that there are some circumstances where that, can't be 6 feet at all times. There's a lot of new research coming out around transmission in children and different ages, where transmission seems to be less than with some of our older students. So we're using all of that information that's coming out to make sure that we're thinking through what's the best possible scenario for our kiddos to be in class and in school, being safe as possible, as well as getting exercise and movement and being able to have some kind of normalcy. In addition, we'll be doing lots of education around hand washing and cough and respiratory etiquette, and then also making sure that folks understand what illness looks like and understand the importance of reporting to somebody when they're not feeling well or they're sick, so that we can make sure that they get home and don't possibly expose other people.
Rob Price is here. Do you want to talk a little bit about the efforts that are going in on cleaning and the facility side of things?
Randy, I think Rob might have lost connection. I can jump.
No, I didn't notice that he was gone.
No worries. So he's working on it right now. I just can jump in a little bit. Certainly, we will be providing opportunities for regular cleaning of all of the high touch surfaces and cover areas, making sure that we are keeping our overnight cleaning very specific to the expectations that are set out by CDE, CDC, and all of our partners so that our students have clean environments. We are limiting, if not eliminating, all access to things like manipulatives that have constant touch. Our bathrooms will be cleaned regularly in between lunches if students are in the lunchroom, they'll have a cleaning, as well as the slide actually that was shown at the board meeting the other day shares some deep information around what that cleaning protocol would look like as we do our daily components. And then moving through Mondays, going back and cleaning again in a deeper way. So we did hear some feedback about families thinking as we move Wednesday to Monday. And I just want to address that part of that process is the availability of doing the cleaning overnight at a level that is appropriate for what we need to do, and wanting to make sure that our students have the opportunity to come to school as often as possible in this phase 3 model. I
really appreciate you bringing that up, because we did get a lot of questions on both social media and in other avenues in regards to that and the moving of the day. And I will mention too, in regards to the movement of that, one of the things that we had said early on was that we were going to look at alignment with other school districts, since that's one of the things that went into that. And then also, Margaret, my understanding is that we were considering the fact that a lot of holidays typically fall on Mondays as well, and we didn't want students to lose out on, 1 of 2 days of in-person learning if that's the case.
Correct. There's typically 17 days in a year based on the calendar. So we wanted to make sure that students didn't miss out that much, as well as making sure that we were aligning with our partners as much as possible moving forward. We want to be as clear and transparent as we can so that our staff and our students feel comfortable and safe coming back. So that's the cleaning. Rob, I just jumped in on the cleaning one. I think you're up now, so we're good to go.
Yeah, she did a good job of pinch hitting for you. So
I apologize.
No worries. I know that one of the other questions that came in was, what would it take for us to get to phase 4? The question of, the criteria that maybe we're looking at. And I know we've been working on a matrix in close collaboration with our public health partners, but Stephanie, do you want to kind of talk about, what we look at when we're thinking about either going upward or, in the likelihood, the possibility that we'll have schools that have to go down to phase 1 in order to have a quarantine?
There we go. Like you mentioned, there are a lot of different criteria when we're looking at moving from phase to phase. Really what we have based phase 4 for us on here in BVSD is being aligned with the state protect your neighbor phase, which really puts us in a position of having 3 different main criteria: hospital capacity that's available, cases, what the cases are occurring in our community, if we're trending up or down or staying pretty level, and then having sufficient testing and contact tracing capabilities to be able to follow up. Identify folks quickly and have them quarantine and then, reduce some of that transmission. So right now, the governor did put all of the requests to move into Protect Your Neighbor on hold for a few weeks. So even if that was open right now, Boulder County doesn't meet those criteria, all of the criteria, so we can't move into that phase. That phase really provides us with the opportunity to bring more students back, and so have more kids together and teachers together.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the spacing, because once you have 6-foot spacing between desks, I mean, you really can't have more than half a class, in at a time. I know that Rob, I'll pull you back to ask you about transportation. I know that you guys have been working super closely, because the idea of the 6-foot distance in the busing essentially sort of made busing pretty ineffective at that point. 6 people on a bus at a time, I think it was?
We were allowed, when we had 6-foot guidance, it was 6 people on a 65-passenger bus. And the current guidance allows us to sit 2 students per seat. So, but our capacity, this is our challenge, our capacity is still reduced by a third. So at the elementary level, when we used to be able to transport 65 passengers, now we're down to 41, 42. So right now we are really encouraging our families to walk and bike. We are also creating a challenge for the park 3 blocks away and walk just from traffic congestion. That is one of our significant concerns, is how can we reduce traffic congestion? How can we reduce pollution around our building? So right now what we are committed to is being able to transport our students that have transportation in their IEP, our preschool students that have transportation, and then all elementary transportation eligible students. So we are going to be rolling out an opt-in program next week. And once parents get that, it'll be going into Infinite Campus, clicking the box that you need transportation. And then that will determine how many families are asking for it, which will then help us with our capacity. At that time, we'll be able to know if we'll be able to transport any middle or senior high school students. So we need, what's going to be important is be watching for your email, watch for that opt-in to come in, complete that process. The sooner that we complete that and we know what our cohorts look like in our schools, then we'll be able to send out confirmation that you are transportation eligible this year.
Perfect. And I know just like in the school classes, there will be, efforts that are being taken, like masks being worn and, that kind of thing in there as well, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, masking will be required during the day. Now, I think we've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to make sure that we're giving masking breaks to our students. And, what that looks like may be different during the different times of the year. In the summer, hopefully we can get outside, make sure that we're physically distancing, and we're giving the students breaks as long as our teachers, right? I don't know if anybody's tried it, but the idea that you can be in a classroom for 7 or 8 hours a day wearing a mask, I don't think it's realistic of us to think that. So we're going to have to build in breaks for all of our students and our staff. But right now, based on current guidance, everybody's going to be required to wear a mask unless they have a health or an education reason not to.
I know on social media, one of the questions that we got a lot of was the idea of like, okay, so how are you going to enforce that? And I don't have the exact comment up here right now, but the idea for, at a kindergarten level, are you going to be giving them, a suspension or something like that? Margaret, I know that our intent is not to be heavy-handed with this, more educational. What would you want to say in regards to how we're going to approach that?
Thanks, Randy, for the opportunity. I do think it's key, as Rob mentioned, our breaks are going to be very, very important for our adults as well as our students, right? Everybody needs a break wearing a mask, and providing those quick breaks. If a student, it's a lot like many of the things that we teach our students when they're coming into school. It's going to look a lot like that versus discipline. We really want it to be developmentally appropriate. We want students to grow understanding that the mask is kind of just a new process as they learn when they learn coming to school, like how to go to the cafeteria or how to use, go to the facilities when they need to. We want to make sure that we're making it as much of a learning opportunity as possible. What I would say is, and I've read this quite a bit as a mom, trying to get a 10-year-old boy to keep his mask on is really very difficult. And what we've done is practice. So as a matter of fact, today we were out for a little while and it started to creep down and I said, get that mask back up, and he was like, I don't want to. And it really was just about growth and that you need to wear it. Now, do I think that's easy in every scenario? Absolutely not. But really our parents and community can help as much as possible from now until school opens. And then know that for us, it's not about punishment. It's not about discipline. It's really just the same way that we teach other health and safety modeling. We want to make sure that we're doing that for our students because it is a global issue. So definitely relates to where we are in school as well.
I'm sure that the idea of, that they're part of, the solution essentially, that by doing this, we're ensuring that our school stays open and that kind of thing will probably be part of that conversation. I know another part of this is the idea of temperature checks and screening. We did get a number of questions. We mentioned in our letter that we're going to pass a screening. That's been the recommendation from Boulder County Public Health and our other Broomfield County Public Health. I don't know why I just had trouble with that. Stephanie, this is something that we'll be asking folks to fill in before they come into school every day. What will that look like?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that this screening is really a multi-tiered process. So we really want to prevent students and staff from coming to the building sick. So having this screening start at home is really enabling us to hopefully keep as many folks who are symptomatic or ill at home and not show up at school. And that's really why we want to start with this passive screening at home. So that'll be the first check kind of for students when they're coming. If they ride a bus or if they take transportation, our bus drivers will just kind of make sure that they see them when they come in. And if they're coughing or their nose is running or something else, then, hopefully they can connect with a parent and, have them not come into school then. And then when they get to school, there'll be another series of checks. So staff will know what to look for. We'll be identifying students throughout the day that might become sick or show up that are sick. So it really is a multi-tiered process that involves all of us making sure that we are taking the best precautions as possible. There are some standard screening questions, looking for fever, looking for shortness of breath and cough, the symptoms that we all know and have heard over and over again. There are a lot of symptoms that can show up with COVID. And so it's really important that we don't kind of disregard the simple runny nose or the simple scratchy throat, because a lot of times those might be the symptoms, especially that are showing up in little ones. So that will be reinforced to families and to teachers and to children as well, to be cognizant of what's going on in their bodies and let people know when they're not feeling well.
I know that we will in just a little bit talk about the educational side of that picture and the flexibility that we know is going to have to be there for our classrooms and our students. So let's hold off on that for just a minute. But Margaret and Chris, you don't let me let me get off the hook if I don't ask that question. But before I do go to that, the other question that comes up out of that is that on the health side of things is really, okay, so what happens when we find out that someone has COVID or has symptoms of COVID? This is something that we've actually gotten a little bit of practice in as we've gone back to having athletic practices, because now we have kids that are back together and we have that system. So we're getting a little bit of practice. You want to talk about what that will look like?
Yes, absolutely. We are getting that practice. It's true. We have really developed, I think, a very good system internally for our staff to work as what we call COVID coordinators. So they're trained in a process of being able to ask screening questions if somebody is ill, being able to follow up with them and determine where they were, what sort of distancing and masking was going on, and then a process of alerting us in health services, in HR if it's staff, as well as then also working with our public health partners. If they get confirmation that somebody has been tested and is positive, they immediately let us know, and vice versa. If we have folks that are sick, or we see that there are a number of people that are sick in the same group, then we let them know, and it's a constant back and forth. They have also been able to assign an epidemiologist from Boulder County that is working with the schools, an educational liaison, really working with CU and St. Vrain and us. And so we will have one person that we can go to that is really just focused on education. So we have that immediate connection with them to be able to call and run through scenarios and situations so that we can make sure that people are notified and we get information out quickly.
I know that one of the things that we're looking to do for our staff, we're working on a partnership right now to test them biweekly. If they have symptoms, even sooner than that, having them have an opportunity to go to a place where they can bypass lines and get straight into that. And the results would be to us very quickly so that we can take action on that as well. Yeah, Rob, before we go too far off of the health, I feel like the guy that's, in baseball that's just sliding away from the plate. And I want to just make sure I tag back real quick on this question. We got a question from online in regards to whether or not we'll be doing any sort of testing to ensure that our cleaning is working. They called it an ATP test. Anything that you want to add in that regard?
Randy, and we do it now, and we've been doing a recent study to show how cleaning our desktops, this is something we've been doing over the last year, cleaning our desktop reduces absenteeism. So this is a study that's been happening behind the scenes, but the idea is we'll continue doing this same ATP testing is what they call it. They use a lot in healthcare, and it just tells us how effective we are when we're cleaning our surfaces. So what we're seeing right now, the virus can live on a surface for 1 to 3 days. So what we have to do is make sure that we're disinfecting prior to somebody touching a surface that could be contaminated. So that's the idea behind the cleaning of high-touch surfaces. And then as we're doing that, we'll be spot checking with what we call this ATP test. It just gives us a really quick indication if our cleaning is effective or not. But that's something that we've been doing for quite some time, and we're going to continue doing.
Perfect. I also wanted to just sort of give you an opportunity too. Margaret did such a great job of covering the base, but in regards to that big question of we are going to be cleaning our classrooms daily for that purpose. In fact, some of our we've gotten some feedback on the preschool side of things in regards to having students there for a single day a week. That's partly because of the amount of materials that have to be cleaned. So I know that that's something that our staff is looking into. In addition to that, again, we do plan on using that Monday day to bring in additional custodial teams. What will they do during that day? They're going to be covering a lot during their main days, and then they're still going to be, yeah.
So the challenge is going to be right, how do we keep up with our normal cleaning while we're cleaning all these high touch surfaces, right? So the idea here is that on Monday when we're coming back, we're doing a lot of the normal cleaning that we would normally do, but we're also using a lot of soap and water, where the rest of the week we're doing a lot of disinfecting. So the idea with the soap and water is you do that on Monday, which makes the disinfecting more effective the rest of the week, and then we continue that routine. So that's the idea here. And then, we're looking for additional staff to help us support this, because we have a phenomenal custodial department across the board in all of our schools. I'm very blessed to work with people we have, but we're asking a lot here, and it's going to be an all pitch in to make this. And cleaning is extremely essential in keeping everybody safe and healthy. So the idea here is just make that normal cleaning and then soap and water to make everything more effective.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate that. So I do want to mention a few messages that we have gotten so far. A little bit of pushback in regards to me and Rob having some happy talk. I apologize for that. We do typically start the show with a little bit of conversation in regards to things that are going on. So we are now getting into the meat of it, and the real meat that we've been getting a lot of questions about has to do with what will school look like this fall. And so I'll bring up the graphic here in a second in regards to some of the schedules, if you'd like to, Margaret, to kind of talk about that. But why don't we start with kind of a big question that came out of yesterday's message. Cindy Rosenberg Copeland asked, what exactly does a plan for high school look like? They were a little confused by the email that we sent out, and we acknowledged that there was a little bit of a discrepancy there between the graphic and then what we had in the text. Why don't you start by kind of talking about what people can expect there?
Sure. And first, I just want to say we appreciate the questions, because they definitely guide our work. And certainly it's very interesting when you're very deep in this work and then suddenly a message goes out. You're like, oh, I thought it said it this way. So, appreciate that acknowledgement. I will say that the other piece is that it is very complex. Any of us who have been to high school and spent, 7 or 8 periods of moving and trying to keep kids separated anyway, cafeteria and transitions, high school becomes extremely difficult to plan. However, we are very excited. Our high school principals have done an amazing job coming together and talking about, many of our schools have 8 periods on Monday, Tuesday, and then have block already. So what we're looking at doing, if you look at the high school graphic, is that the school would be broken into approximately 45% and 45%, right? It's 50-50, but we know that some students, we want to give the flexibility for not feeling comfortable coming back. And that group model would be that group A would come in person while group B is doing home learning. Now, in that group A attendance, the students at this point would be doing periods 1 through 4. And then on Wednesday, that same group would be doing periods 5 through 8, while group B is at home doing their 1 through 4, and on Wednesday, they're 5 through 8, and then obviously switching on Thursday and Friday. The reason that it becomes a little bit confusing is because that is all contingent on how our families determine they want to send their students back to school, and how our staff feel about returning as well, in terms of their in terms of providing their choice, expectation of where they'll be coming back. Based on those numbers, that system may move to a more reduced amount. Additionally, if the health department feels, or if as we're moving forward, our partners feel like we need to reduce those numbers of groups, we have the flexibility in this model to do group A would have 2 classes in person on Tuesday and 2 on Wednesday. And then group B would be doing those classes at home in home learning. And the difference would be that over a 13-week or 14-week semester, it would be reduced so that 6 or 7 weeks would be in those 2 classes, and then they would switch, keeping those groups as close as possible. Again, not ideal, but certainly trying to provide options based on the number of students that determine that they want to come back for face-to-face. There will be more information coming out about this because, as you can tell, just for me to explain it, it's complex. Our goal would be that Monday becomes that learning launch day. So maybe some in our community are familiar with flipped classroom style, so that students are getting that preliminary learning for the week on that Monday. So definitely connected to school. Those families in general, this is for high school specific, that choose to do home learning in non-Boulder Universal, so they're connected directly to their school and doing home learning. We want people to understand that there will be opportunity for synchronous and asynchronous learning. It will depend. That won't happen immediately, and we want families to understand that we're working through what those systems would look like. That's the benefit for us of having that universal platform at secondary, where they're using Schoology, so that students have the availability to check in, and teachers will be putting all of their assignments and all of their coursework and all of their information onto those platforms. Similarly, if there's a situation where a student isn't able to come in during the semester, they would still be able to access their work. For middle school, again, I know it's super complex. Please feel free to continue to ask questions, send emails. For our middle school component, same model as elementary, in the sense that I'll address our K-8 very quickly. Students would be coming in cohort groups. If you are in a K-8, your 6th, 7th, and 8th grade grouping would be 3 periods of a day, making sure that your content is being addressed every day. So that's a little bit different, and a lot of that has to do with staffing as well as access in building space. So a little bit different than middle schools that don't have elementary school students in them. There's some a little bit less flexibility for that K-8 model. However, in the middle school model, it will look like groups very similar. Group A comes in on Tuesday and Wednesday, and Group B is home learning. What we're working on right now, based on the numbers that determine they want to come back to school, will be that the middle school component will look like 2 blocks a day of large amounts of time, so that the transitions are less, and students would get their core in other areas through home learning. So their face-to-face time would go deep in those 2 periods a day, and then that transition would happen over a 4-week period of time, so that students in this hybrid model would not be carrying during 6th, 7th, and 8th grade more than 2 classes at a time. And the reason that we do that is because middle school, as we all know, lots of transition, lots of things going on socially, emotionally, academically, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. And we were very clear that as we built this out, if we have to transition in content from home to in person and be really flexible, we wanted our students to be very successful. So again, same question, anytime somebody has questions, please feel free to email us, because that helps us hone in on our level of communication and specificity. So I'll say a plug one more time, please, please, please get that information in for us. And then I'll address really quickly again here the home learning. If families would like their home learning connected to their school, so that they are connecting to the work on the platform and having opportunities to connect to the class or classroom as often as possible, they will be assigned a teacher in that space. The second piece is, if you attend Boulder Universal as a full-time student, you also will have a Boulder Valley School District teacher providing that instruction, and you will be associated to the school community, in the sense that if there's an event going on at the school, or if you're getting information about the school that you've attended, you will still be connected to that. What we can't guarantee is that you will always have that community connection with your classmates you'll have classmates, but they'll be Boulder Universal classmates, versus in home learning, you'll have more opportunity to connect with your existing classroom cohort, similar to a face-to-face, but always online. And it's imperative that our families will be providing videos and instructional components about how to get onto those platforms and how to set up systems. So please bear with us. They'll be in English and in Spanish, and we'll be providing that, and webinars as well. And then just again, I mentioned this at the board meeting, we have over 1,000 videos that have been filmed. We are so grateful to our teachers, administrators, for working together to get this launched so that our teachers have access to a plethora of resources, and we'll continue to do that. All right, Randy, thanks. I'm good for now.
I think it's the Margaret show. We'll just hand it over. Chris, would you like to add to that? I think that work that's going on, questions that we've gotten over the last day have included, what has been done to improve home learning? Okay, so you're doing this, how are the teachers going to be prepared for it? There's a lot of those kind of things that are being worked on and have been worked on over the entire summer.
Yeah, absolutely. As Dr. Crespo just said, there's a plethora of resources that have been developed, and we have an amazing team that has developed so many resources that are going to be ready and waiting for teachers when they return. As we push the start of the school year back, and we have started to call that the Teacher Support Week, because that's really what it's going to be dedicated to, is allowing them the opportunities to be in those specific online platforms so that they become extremely comfortable with how that content will be in there, as well as how they can interact with students within those platforms. I think the biggest thing that we heard from the spring, one of the things that we're really going to focus on as a system is consistency in communication, consistency in feedback, and consistency in platforms, because we did hear from a lot of our families that they had a difficult time in navigating all of the different tools, all of the different resources. They wanted just a little bit more direction of where do I need to go? How do I operate within this one platform so that I can make sure that my students are getting what they need? And so we heard that loud and clear, and which is why we're going to be really intentional with how we go about the frequency of the feedback that students are receiving, and the common place that they'll be able to go, a one-stop shop to receive all that information, their assignments. And as Dr. Crespo mentioned, we've been thinking about this for a while, as knowing that phase 3 would be a likely place that we would be able to start the school year, but also knowing that it was going to be a very challenging thing for our students and our staff to accomplish. We were building this model knowing that we were going to have to maintain a level of home learning to ensure that we had that flexibility, whether that is just students not having that level of comfort to return to the classroom, or if they're unable to, or God forbid if a student becomes ill and has to be away from the classroom for a while. So giving that launch day, and Dr. Crespo mentioned a flipped classroom, giving that Monday an opportunity for those teachers to upload that content, to have it all right there in front of them, gives us so much flexibility and preparation so that students can navigate that depending on what situation they're in their personal life. So there's going to be a lot more consistency with home learning. And again, I think we're going to take advantage of, although it's a very difficult thing for us to pull off as a system, we're going to take advantage of the schedule, and we're going to put teachers in a position where they can be successful.
Chris, do you mind sharing a little bit about the unit planning and the template? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, absolutely. So we are launching pre-built units for each grade level that teachers can access, and within those pre-built units, we have modules and resources that are specifically dedicated towards how teachers could support students in either blended, online, or in person. And so by providing these units and hand delivering those to teachers when they return, it's taking the pressure off of them to try to, like I said, go through the multiple different tools and what's the best tool to use for this specific unit. I'm teaching a science class and this tool works good, but there's another tool that might work better. We have a team that's already gone through that entire process to say, hey, if you have a student who's online, this is the great tool to use for science. They're going to really interact well with it. You're going to be able to see how well they're comprehending the content really, really well. Here's the module that we'd like to use if you're a blended, for those in-person opportunities you have 2 days a week. Here's some things that you can do while in person. So having those pre-built, it's been a tremendous amount of work from our team. And as a leadership team, not long ago, we were able to look through all of it, and it was just absolutely inspiring to see the amount of work they put into it. All of this group of educators, longtime educators, almost bringing tears to their eyes, just seeing, wow, our teachers are going to feel so supported in this. And as challenging a time as it is, it was really exciting to see that work come to fruition.
Excellent. And to mention too that the additional week of training in that time, we do expect that we'll be working with them on those expectations and training them on great tips on home learning and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I think shoulder to shoulder is our motto on that right now. We need to, as Dr. Anderson said at the very beginning of this, partnering with our teachers to say exactly, hey, we have all of these tools and these resources. We obviously need to provide time for them to get comfortable using them and to be able to reflect on those. But then also them letting us know what we can do to support them and collecting their feedback and their questions and so that we can be responsive. And we're going to continue to do that throughout the year, not just in that teacher support week, but that's going to be a very busy time for us to make sure that we're meeting the needs of teachers as they come up.
I think it's been clear through all this, but I want to express that there has been groups of teachers that have been working over the summer so that when the rest of the teachers that have had summer break off come back, that they're able to get up to speed and that all these resources are available. Just want to make sure to say that. Here's a couple other questions that we've got that really is in an area, back to that flexibility, what this will look like, especially for home learning. Amy on Twitter says, many parents have asked during that 2 to 4 days of home learning, how much direct teacher-student connection will be required? I know that many middle school kids are tech savvy, can't resist going off task. I think they're looking for how much of that time is actually going to be sitting with the teacher. On Facebook, we got a similar question about, will home learning through school students, this is actually from Joni Severson. She wrote, will home learning through their schools, will the students be able to access live lectures from teachers? And I know this is at the high school level, got a number of questions that were along those lines. Margaret, I know we're working on some equipment. It's a little bit like toilet paper right now to get cameras and tripods. I will just say that out loud, that getting the equipment right now is definitely part of the difficulty. And we're not necessarily fully there yet, but there are some thoughts in regards to having instruction in the classroom that might be being able to be sent home as well, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that as we move forward, you're right, the supply chain has definitely become an issue. But one of the benefits is that we have really incredible teachers that did amazing in March when they were able to connect with their students. So we're categorizing all of those components of what we need for students to be successful in an online environment, and have spent the entire summer figuring out how to do that in a way that helps teachers make those connections, develop those expectations. And we will be providing for families as we move forward what they can expect. This, as an example, I can expect to hear from my teacher, from my child's teacher once a week around how things are going. In a very general, like, this is what we're learning, these are questions you should be asking. They should be hearing, students should be connecting with their teachers on a very regular basis. I say that because in a K-12 model, it may be every day, it may be when they have the class. So there has to be some flexibility around that as well. And we'll be providing that for families moving forward so that they know what to expect. And when they're in that home learning environment, our parents are partners with us, and we certainly want them to reach out if there are suggestions and things that we can do. And I would hope that as we're moving forward with equipment and things start coming in, we'll be providing things. Some of the examples that have come up are like morning meetings, so that the kids all connect together on their Chromebook and just, hey, this is what we're doing today. If you have any questions, we'll check in later, just so that there's kind of a regular contact with the whole classroom. Not necessarily like a 2-hour, we're connecting all the time, just giving opportunity for that community building. And lots of our partners in other districts are doing the same. So I will say that we're learning from each other moving forward. And we certainly will continue to do that.
To the point of the flexibility. So we know that, it's possible that a kid may get sick, have a COVID symptom, have to stay home. We know that the possibility of parents feeling comfortable one day and then based on the news, the next day they may not be. I know that we're intending to approach this as flexibly as we can, but part of the reason that we need to kind of know where people sit is so that we can plan and have teachers assign. Give us a little idea, and again, this is something that will warp and shape as we have more information and all these things as we get more accustomed to this model. But what can you tell people in terms of what that might look like?
So what we would ask if they're choosing home learning or in-person learning and suddenly realize that they need to transition, we'd ask you to keep your student in mind. Certainly, there are natural transitions and breaks that allow for your student to come back. This year will already have a number of natural transitions based on the systems of the pandemic as we move forward. So we would say that the less transitions that our students can have in general, the better. So thinking about, I'm home learning and it's not working and this isn't happening. perhaps waiting for a trimester or a quarter to come up, so that that transition allows for the child to be able to transition in versus saying it's not working today or it is working tomorrow, because that is really a burden on all of our students. The social systems, the systems of being in an environment take transition in general when we start back in August. And many of us as parents know that those first couple of days, your kids, no matter what age they are, come home exhausted because they are learning kind of all of those social modes. So what we would ask is that please use a typical normal break or transition in the school calendar to allow your student to come back and forth.
One of the questions that we got, I think really kind of fits into this is again, we know that CU students are going to return. Nicole Martini asked, how many cases in Boulder will send us into phase 1 of learning? I know, again, it may not be as specific in terms of like a single case or a number of cases, but Stephanie, do you want to kind of talk about, again, that idea of how we're going to be looking at this? And I just want to say too that one of the biggest things that I've been saying is that this is, you cannot have normal during a pandemic. The idea of in-person being like what we've always been accustomed to in our schools, where everybody's just every day there, and that's where you're expected to be and all that kind of thing. Because every day, again, students may have to stay home because they've got symptoms. Classes may be asked to stay home for up to 2 weeks because they need to be quarantined. Again, I'll turn that over to you.
Well, that's absolutely right. And I think there's a lot of different criteria that are going to go into determining how the district moves, how individual schools move. It's going to be what is the community transmission, what's happening around our community, because of course we have teachers and students that come from outside of our communities also that attend BVSD. Working hand in hand as we have continuously with our public health partners, because there's a lot going on around and outside of just school that affects what's happening in our community that they're able to project and model and look at. So all of those different things are really going to be criteria as we look at how we're moving. How many staff do we have? What's that availability? Are we coming into cold and flu season where we're going to have more illness in the community anyways? There's just so many things that we'll be looking at. And it's, as always, a communication and a collaboration with our community health partners.
I know that I mentioned before that we've gotten a little bit of practice around this. And so one of the questions that we got is, somebody tests positive in a cohort, how will that be communicated? What will we know, that kind of thing. And so, essentially a lot of questions around HIPAA, how much information is going to be provided, that kind of thing. For one, we are protecting the identity of a person, but we are making sure that people are aware of when the exposure happened, whether or not we know it's a confirmed case versus a suspected case. What more would you want to know, let people know about in that?
I would say that there is some new guidance that should be coming out from CDPHE specifically for schools around outbreaks. And they do break cases into confirmed and probable cases. And there are, some really very clear, again, criteria and protocols to follow when we're looking at who we identify, whether it's a cohort, if it's beyond multiple cohorts in a school, do we identify and notify more people in the school that student might have been in relation to, or that staff person? It will always be, like you mentioned, shared in a way that keeps the individual person's personal information confidential, and we'll always also supply information on testing and how to quarantine, what to do if you do have symptoms. And, hopefully we'll have our school nurses and health staff being able to follow up with families and check in with them as well.
This is a different situation than a normal cold and flu season where, you're checking your kid and maybe they got a cough, but you're not sure. We really want people to take the precaution, and there won't be any sort of ramification for that. We really want you to take that seriously.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of questions, Rob. One of the things that we've gotten is, we have beautiful campuses, and it's beautiful this time of year, albeit about 90 degrees out there, especially during graduation on the hot asphalt or stage. But the idea that what about sending kids outside to learn? We give them, sort of the freedom to be out there in the open air, less concern around ventilation. This is something that I know your team's working on.
You say it. I mean, we're fortunate to live in Colorado, and we have a team right now that's working to identify not only areas, right? Most of our campus have plenty of space outdoors. It's a very cost-effective solution. If you look at it from a risk standpoint, it's a lower risk to be outdoors. So we have to make sure that we're giving our teachers and our staff the tools to be able to utilize the outdoors. So the challenge with the outdoors, sometimes it's unreliable, right? Is we might have a rainstorm coming through, or we get into October and we start thinking about snowstorms, etc. But when we can, we will be encouraging the use of outdoors, and we will be giving those tools to our teachers, and communicating that to our parents, because it doesn't make sense not to use them.
I know some people have asked us about, can we get, are we going to be buying tents? I think Rice University has a gigantic tent on their campus, that kind of thing. It's something that we are seriously looking at.
We are, and yeah, we've got a team on it right now identifying, do we rent, do we buy, how many, and can we get them by August 26th? So that's what we're working on right now.
Maybe not the size of Rice's, but yeah, beautiful at that university. One of the other questions that we just got was back to the cohorts at a high school level. So they're kind of questioning, the numbers. While we are talking about an elementary level, fairly small groups, we are talking about a fairly large group at a high school level. Is that accurate? They were saying about, 1,000 kids or something like that a day.
Right. So right now the guidance falls within that 50% for a comprehensive high school. For a cohort, we expect about 45%. And the way that we mitigate that, knowing that very honestly, lots of our students typically take grade level class levels. So we'll try as much as possible. Well, we will stagger our times in the hallways. We will make social distancing and masks. There will be opportunities similarly as in elementary for lots of hand washing and sanitizing and things like that. And we will be limiting transition. So one of our goals is that the reason that we're in a 4x4 is because in theory, then the students, I shouldn't say in theory, because then the students don't need to transition more than the 2 times. Like they're coming in, they transition the first time to the class, the second time to the class, and then they're gone. So they're still falling within the amount of transition space within a school day with that staggered and monitoring. And we'll use different entrances and exits and things like that to allow for less crossover of students as much as possible. And the benefit for us is that if we do have to, obviously we're at July whatever today, the days start to run together. By August, if we are at a different system where we have to use a 2x2 and lessen those ability for transition, we're even more able to pull that back because we've already built out that model.
Perfect. Rob, we did get a question in regards to what buildings, what we will do for buildings that don't have air conditioning. I know this is another issue that you guys have really been working closely on.
And again, over the cap, if you look back 3 years ago, Randy, almost 50% of our 57 schools didn't have air conditioning. And, going into the summer, we've got 13 bond projects. So a lot of those schools are getting air conditioning this summer. But unfortunately, we still have 8 schools that don't, not counting our 4 mountain schools. So what we rely on is our nighttime purge, which is only effective when temperatures get below 60 for 3 or 4 hours at night. So we've utilized this for years, and I completely understand if you're in one of our elementary schools and temperatures are in the mid 80s, it's unreasonable to expect that we're going to be teaching in those conditions. So again, I think we're going to be encouraging the use of outdoors at those schools. We are also looking at for some additional guidance on the use of our portable air conditioners and our EVAP coolers. So there's some new information that is out that you don't want to be using fans that would spread the virus. But this idea with the ventilation, increasing ventilation, is really diluting the air. So if you would have a virus in the air, what you're trying to do is dilute that air. The problem we have is when our exterior temperatures or outdoor temperatures are getting into the 90s, we're pumping that 90-degree temperature into our buildings. So again, when you don't have air conditioning that mechanically cool that fresh air, you're only making the space warmer. So taking advantage of outdoor spaces, waiting for additional guidance on portable looking at HEPA filters to bring into our classroom again to clean that air. And then if it gets too hot, the discussion will have to be had about doing an early release or not having school at all that day. So this did not go into our decision making, but delaying school by 1 week helped. But then the idea is usually we get into that mid-September, third week of September, we're out of this hot season. So we've got about a month, we've got a bridge here, and we've got some tools, but we're still waiting for some additional guidance on the use of those portable devices that I spoke about.
Perfect, thank you. I know, we've gotten a number of questions, especially, and again, just another plug in regards to, we really need your information. We need you to help us to understand if you're going to opt out or planning on enrolling in Boulder Universal. The question is, and I don't know if Chris or Margaret want to answer this, when will we know what day cohort we're in? Can my family make requests? And then also, will siblings be in the same schedule?
Right. So I'll take that one. I will say, first off, there are tens of thousands of students in the district that we're trying to put into groups. And very honestly, in a super transparent way, we are starting with separating groups and knowing where students do well in classrooms, if they're returning, and what that looks like. Like, are they with the correct learning environment? Are they with the correct group of students for their own learning style? So we will be, very honestly, literally the moment that the survey closes, we'll start working on that to develop what those parameters are for how many students we have and what that looks like. And then siblings, as we've always said, would be a priority through that model. Families that need aftercare, families that are using systems and community pieces. We certainly are taking all of those things into consideration, but it would be absolutely impossible for us to go one by one. Because we have to keep that group so closely aligned to that percentage in order for us to make it work and for students to be able to come back to school. So we'll try as much as possible, but there's no way that we can take individual student needs from phone calls and emails and things like that. It will really have to be based on what those clusters of students need and those groupings.
Thank you, Margaret. A couple other questions that we've gotten, and I know you've heard these ones before. Will there be elementary specials? People also want to know about athletics, clubs, choir. Again, I'll start by saying we know that nothing is quite normal right now, but people, we know that our students really love, participating in choir or the instrumental music. It's the art that keeps them wanting to come to school every day. What might that look like?
So first, I'll address that the athletic component will really come from our health departments as well as CHASA, the state association, and we're looking for guidance and connecting with them, again, pretty much on a daily basis. I will say that we absolutely recognize the incredible importance of our electives and specials for our students, and we're finding ways so that if we are limited based on aerosol, students singing in an experience that they have to be 9 or 10 feet away, where it's really difficult to then supervise a large group of students, we'll find ways to make sure that we're engaging our students in the arts and physical education and instrumental, choir, music, things like that. We are currently planning very closely with our coordinator of our instrumental program or specials programs so that we can provide those opportunity for students. We can't say that it will look like it has before. We just don't have that availability, but it's certainly an absolute priority for us.
Perfect. I want to bring up a communication question and feedback that we got. Leo the Lion on Twitter wrote, are the questions on the form going to be answered somewhere in writing? It really seems like it's a free-for-all right now, and he feels like the FAQ is not answering all of his questions. Yes, the answer is the FAQ is where we're going to be massing all this information, all this great conversation. We're going to be really getting this down into answers to people's questions in that space. As well as offering more opportunities like that. I also want to thank a few other people that have had that same kind of question in regards to how information is going to be shared. We're also committed to really making sure that we're consistently coming back with updates. Again, with the high school families as a great example, we didn't quite clarify that properly or communicate it effectively, and so you can expect a message to high school families on that in the very near future. And we will be continuing to communicate on all these issues. I guess as we normally done, we have so many great questions. but I may not have hit something that through the whole conversation you go, that's really important, we need to get that across. I'm just going to kind of do a little round robin. Stephanie, anything that I didn't hit today that you want to make sure we get across to people?
I just want to really reinforce to people that some of the best ways that they can get prepared for school to start in the fall is to talk about masking with their children, get them familiar with it, practice hand washing, respiratory hygiene, and really being very cognizant of symptoms that they might be feeling. Very recently, some of the cases that have been identified here in our community have been really very mild symptoms, very much like cold symptoms, runny nose, scratchy throat. So don't think that that it's just passing and you're going to be better and potentially expose somebody. Really take it very seriously.
Perfect. Margaret, anything that you want to share?
I would just say, please, please, please fill out the survey so that we can move forward with our planning. And then please know that we absolutely recognize the need for this partnership and moving forward, and just welcome the opportunity to work together to move us forward into the future for our kids.
Perfect. Rob Price.
Thank you, Randy. No, I'm extremely proud of the plan that we've put together. We've had a tremendous team working on this. It only matters if we execute. So, from an operations perspective, that's what we're focused on. We've been focused on all that all summer long. And over the next month, that's what we're going to be focused on, providing professional development for our staff, making sure ventilation systems work properly, making sure we can support families and teachers and our classified staff as much as possible. So that is all in the works. And I want everybody to understand we have a fantastic team working on this and a dedicated team to make it successful.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Chris?
No, I think we hit it, Randy. I just want to say thank you. We're all so very thankful to be working and be a part of the BVSD community, and love the opportunity to engage with folks and answer these questions. And we're going to continue to problem solve and continue to answer those questions as they come up. And wow, we really appreciate your partnership. So thanks.
Typically, this is where I would say goodbye, but I got one last one on Twitter that I think is a good question that we should ask. If you guys don't mind sticking around for me one more second, I'm going to pose this one to Margaret. Dr. Katie Dickerson asked on equity is a very important thing to us right here in the school district. On equity impacts for this whole situation, 2 specific questions. I'm going to start with the first one and then ask the second one separate. Does enrolling BU divert money from your home school? And I know one of the things that we really try to convey is that stick with us. We know that this is difficult. We know that it's not ideal. We are trying to provide options, as the superintendent talked about at the board meeting, 100% custodial care. We have child care that's being developed for those that might need that, for 5-day care for students. That again, online for folks that really feel like they don't want to be interacting, at our school environment. Those that want to stay at their school, we want them to stay in that home school, and we're going to be working with them. That question about BU though, that money stays in the district, right?
Correct. It does stay in the district. And what we really, exactly to your point, Randy, please stick with us. Any school in Boulder Valley School District, we need you to stay with your schools. BU as one of those schools. So we absolutely it would not divert the money from the district, and really just appreciate that question because it allows us to answer it. So stick with BVSD. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I will say that if you choose to unenroll or those kind of things, it can have a very significant impact on our schools. And if you think about from a school year to school year process, I will say just up front too that we don't really know what CD is planning on doing in terms of our enrollment count and that kind of thing this year. So we're talking sort of the way that it normally works. But as people move out of the school district, that money goes with them. They carry it. And so it's just one of those kind of things that if you think about the teachers that you know and love in your school, we want to support them. Things this year might look crazy and different. People may be moving all over their school or over the district to be able to cover all the needs that we have. But when we come back next year, after this whole situation's done, which we are all praying for, we want to make sure that they're there for our students and that you'll be able to have Mrs. Smith or whoever as that happens. The second question is something that I know that you've been working on, Margaret, which is about learning pods. I know that the question is in regards to facilitating that in the community in a way that doesn't just help privileged students. What would you like to say in regards to? There's a lot of folks talking about pods at this point.
So we have been in touch with the local pod or organizers of the pod and trying to figure out, one, we want to make sure that if families are participating in some type of learning pod, that they let us know. We will be sending out some information to try to gather that, because we want to be able to support our families as much as possible. So look for that form moving forward. We will be continuing to work and partner so that our students, for us, it's really all about the benefit for the students through this process. And we will certainly continue, for those families that are not engaged in those opportunities, to continue to support them through our process of extending learning intervention options, providing those support systems, giving access to online resources when they're not in school. So we are definitely digging deep to figure out how do we do that across the system for all students, so that we can partner with our community members. We can be really nimble and flexible through this process so that our families' needs are met.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that. Thank you for the additional questions. I know I threw a little curveball at everybody. I just want to convey once more that communication for us is key here. We understand that as we move forward, that people are going to have lots of questions. So again, I just want to encourage everyone to go to letstalk.bvsd.org if you have questions that you want to ask, or you want to participate in the surveys that we've got there. As we've said multiple times, Chris, again, it's tomorrow that information is due in regards to if you want to opt out, correct?
Yes, tomorrow.
So we're looking for that. If you're an employee and you have a medical condition or a reason that you can't come to work, we want to make sure that everybody knows that deadline is tomorrow to put that information in as well. We are continuing to try to keep that website updated. Again, my team is working feverishly to get that done, and so we will continue to work on that. My apologies for not having it as full as it can be, and we will continue to work on that. We will likely have more of these Let's Talk educations. I know that we're meeting with our principals next week, that we will be having employee conversations at schools in coming weeks. Just know that this communication does not end here. I think there's an old TV saying, I can't remember what show it was, but let's be in touch, you be in touch, or something like that. I think that's really the idea that we have here. We're going to continue to communicate what's going on and updates continuously as we go. Thank you for your patience and your consideration. I can't wait, and I know that most of us can't wait to be back together again. Thank you for joining us today.